Love it or hate it, Star Trek Generations has a very important place in the canon of the franchise. Namely, is that we get the Next Generation crew on the big screen, and we get Kirk taking a wee tumble off a bridge. Now, however you feel about the film, there is no denying it's a seriously interesting effort. I am Sean Ferrick for Trek Culture, and here are 20 things you didn't know about Star Trek Generations, Part 1. Number 20. Gene Roddenberry was firmly opposed to a TOS-TNG team-up. Generations was the first Trek movie to be produced following the death of creator Gene Roddenberry in 1991, and given Roddenberry's obstinate approach to deciding which stories could and couldn't be told, the creatives decided to push forward with bold new ideas following his death. One such concept was the creative team's suggestions of a movie that teamed the original series cast up with the Next Generation roster, to which Roddenberry had previously expressed firm opposition. While it'd be easy for fans to view such posthumous chicanery as disrespectful, especially so soon after Roddenberry's death, considering the man's reputation for being stubborn, difficult, and slow to accept change, there was shockingly little outcry. Plus, how could any card-carrying Trekkie hear about a Kirk-Picard team-up and not get excited? Number 19. Paramount allowed it to go 40% over budget. The budgets of the Star Trek movies have been all over the map, and though Generations' era-bridging premise was an easy sell to even the most casual Trek fan, Paramount nevertheless wanted to keep the budget tight. The initial budget proposal was set at just over $30 million, slightly above Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country's $27 million price tag, with the extra costs largely incurred by planning shoots in Hawaii, Idaho, and the Midwestern United States. But Paramount ended up nixing some of the location shoots to get the budget down to a svelte $25 million. However, production overages and the necessity to spend an extra $5 million reshooting Kirk's death following poor test reactions bloated the budget out to $35 million. All in all, Generations went 40% over budget, though Paramount were smart enough to know that it was worth throwing extra cash at something as important as Kirk's death, even if in the eyes of many fans, they ultimately still whiffed it. Number 18. Why the uniforms are totally random. Fans often question why the Starfleet crew throughout the film are wearing combinations of costumes from the Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, with seemingly no explanation or even basic consistency whatsoever. The reason for this is that new uniforms had actually been designed for the Enterprise D's crew, which would have included minor military-style variations on the Next Generation's uniforms, including coloured collars matching the rest of the outfit, rank pips on the shoulder, and rank braiding along the wrist. Ultimately, producer Rick Berman wasn't a fan, so all of the changes were scrapped save for new angular comms badge design. This decision occurred late enough in production that Jonathan Frakes and LeVar Burton were forced to borrow costumes from Deep Space Nine's Avery Brooks and Colm Meaney, which naturally didn't fit so well. Though there sadly aren't any surviving images of the planned new uniforms, the call was made too late to prevent a series of Playmates action figures based on the designs being produced and released. Number 17. The saucer crash landing was originally written for TNG'S Season 6 cliffhanger ending. One of the most spectacular moments in the movie is the crash landing of the Enterprise's saucer section, which impacts into the jungle on the planet Veridian 3. As unforgettable as it is, the sequence was actually originally written for the Next Generation's Season 6 cliffhanger, Descent Part 1, but the SFX team insisted that they would struggle to execute the scene to the satisfaction on a TV budget, so recommended that it be saved for the film. And so that's precisely what happened, with co-writer Brannon Braga holding on to the idea and finding a way to slot it into Generations. Given that the sequence's VFX are impressively well-aged for the most part, it's absolutely the right call to hang on and wait for the money to match the scale of the idea. Number 16. Paramount requested Carol Marcus's removal from the script. The film's original script included a part for Captain Kirk's historic love interest, Dr. Carol Marcus, BB Besh, for while Kirk and Marcus were long estranged by this point, Generations' novelization presented them as friends, albeit not without Kirk making one more attempt to rekindle things. Paramount execs ended up requesting that Carol be removed from the script, though with the film's co-writer Ronald D. Moore explaining that the studio was worried about audiences getting confused by Carol's reappearance. Instead, Kirk gets saddled with the veritable non-character of Antonia, Lynn Salvatore, a woman scarcely seen throughout the film and to whom the audience has no emotional attachment whatsoever. In a movie that has to explain the nexus to audiences, worrying about Carol causing confusion is very much besides the point. Number 15. The Next Generation cast shot their scenes 4 days after wrapping the series.
Generations was actually shot in conjunction with the final episodes of The Next Generation, resulting in a hectic production where principal photography was completed in just 51 days, a frankly impossibly short length of time on a modern Star Trek film. To add to the stress, filming began less than 8 months before the movie was due to hit cinemas, which again for any contemporary blockbuster is an absurd turnaround time. The scenes that didn't require The Next Generation's cast members were filmed first while they wrapped up production on the series, and just 4 days after wrapping on the show, they headed over to a separate soundstage to start filming the movie. From the moment TNG's cast finished working on the series, there was a mere 6 months to go until Generations was due to release. That is what you call pressure. Number 14. Spock, Bones and Sulu were originally meant to appear. Ultimately, only 3 of the original series crew appear in the film: Kirk, Scotty, and Chekhov, though Spock, Bones, and Sulu were originally meant to show up. For starters, Leonard Nimoy was invited to both play Spock and direct the film, but felt that the film didn't give him anything to do, and so his lines were largely given to Scotty instead. In the case of DeForest Kelley, it was sadly down to the actor's ailing health, meaning he couldn't receive on-set insurance required to shoot any scenes, resulting in his dialogue being given to Chekhov. George Takei was called back to command the Enterprise B, but refused on the grounds that serving under Kirk again would require Sulu's rank to be reduced. Instead, his daughter Demora was introduced and given most of his lines. Sadly, some of the cast weren't informed about the original series cast members' absences, such as Whoopi Goldberg, who arrived on set expecting to share a screen with Nichelle Nichols. Number 13. Numerous shots were recycled to save money. Because Paramount was desperately attempting to save money during the production, they ended up recycling expensive spaceship shots from previous Trek movies and TV. Most infamously, shots of the Klingon bird of prey, namely its destruction, were lifted from Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, having only been released 3 years earlier. Also, some shots of the Enterprise D were simply reused from The Next Generation. Are these things the end of the world? No, but they just make it clear just how eager Paramount was to cut corners, even if it made the production seem a little lazy and shoddy to fans eagle-eyed enough to notice. The bird of prey explosion is especially unforgivable. Just imagine a new MCU movie trying to get away with recycling one of its many distinctive shots from a few years ago. Number 12. An early concept involved the 2 Enterprise crews fighting. One of the earliest concepts for Generations involved having the 2 generations of Enterprise crews battle one another. Co-writer Ronald D. Moore said, "We were obsessed with the poster image of the 2 Enterprises locked in combat. Kirk versus Picard, one must die." In terms of an image that would easily sell to fans, Moore certainly wasn't wrong, but unsurprisingly, problems quickly arose when the writers attempted to develop the idea further. Namely, what event could possibly bring Kirk and Picard into deathly conflict? As Batman v Superman proved a few years ago, the circumstances that could make 2 beloved heroes fight tend to be a bit contrived and unconvincing at best. While seeing the 2 Enterprises fire on one another or Kirk and Picard throw down would have generated thermonuclear levels of fan service, would it have actually made a lick of sense? Number 11. Kirk's death was spoiled before it was even shot. Though script leaks are infinitely more disastrous today, where everyone has a portable camera-equipped computer in their pocket, they weren't exactly a picnic 3 decades ago either. By March 1994, when Generations was just starting principal photography, a script had been leaked in fan circles and online, revealing both the film's energy ribbon conceit and, most alarmingly, the death of Kirk. To make matters worse, Scotty actor James Doohan confirmed the script's legitimacy at a fan convention that very same month, causing his presumably panicked agent to claim that he hadn't actually seen the completed script. In September 1994, some 2 months before Generations was due to release, another copy leaked online, ensuring the fandom was well aware of what was coming before it happened. Hilariously, Paramount delayed the release of the film's musical score until 3 weeks after the movie hit cinemas to protect against spoilers, what with one of the climactic tracks being bluntly called Kirk's death. Could they really not have just named the track something else? That's everything for this part of the list. Check back soon for part 2. I have been Sean Ferrick for Trek Culture. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, my friends. You can catch us over on Twitter at Trek Culture. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick. You can catch me on my podcast at You're On Crackmate. It is available on all good podcast holders. You are awesome. I will see you soon. You look after yourselves. Live long and prosper.